Hey, what's happening, everybody? So, I'm going to try something a little different today. This is going to be kind of like a podcast because I do want to eventually start a podcast. So, if you're tuning into this, you can just listen. You don't have to watch it, so you can keep it on in the background. And today, what I'm going to talk about is freedom. And let's talk about freedom, all right? Boy, I'm taking on a big topic today, aren't I? And am I going to say some controversial things? No, I don't think so. Because I'm not getting into politics. I'm not getting into, all that stuff. It's never something I'm even going to mess with. Because I don't like the stress, So what I'm going to talk about is how when you live off grid and you start homesteading, I'm actually setting up a battery bank right now, and I'm setting up a battery management system right here. So if I'm looking down, I'm actually working while I'm doing this. So it's kind of like I'm just talking to somebody in the background. Now, I've been doing this for 3 years now, a little over 3 years. And I've lived off grid completely, set up, basically everything you can imagine I've had to do out here. Building buildings. We started building a house. We did our own solar. I've been growing my food, some of it. Been, raising chickens, doing pretty much everything. Raw land completely. So, one of the things that got us doing this in the first place was that we found land, but the problem was that when we wanted to do this, to get the power out here was going to cost like tens of thousands of dollars, like a lot of money. So we quickly realized that, wow, we got to kind of think about what our options are now, right? And this is when, we had to start making big decisions on our life and what we wanted to do with our life. And was this going to be something where it was even worth it? Or do we want to live on the grid and just buy a house that way? Well, one of the things for me, when I think of freedom, like how do you describe freedom? Well, of course, there's a dictionary, where you can look at how how freedom is described. But I think it means something different to everybody. I think a lot of people overlap on what they think freedom is. But, when it comes to freedom, at least living in the United States, one of the things you learn as you become an adult, you quickly learn that you're not near as free as you think you are. And you learn that no matter where you go, there's rules and regulations. And sometimes, a lot of times, these rules and regulations, they're not there to protect you. They never were there to protect you. And this is some of the stuff you realize as you start digging deep into the off-grid lifestyle. You start learning that, they put these things in place. They say it's for people's protection, but, it turns out it's like, no, it has nothing to do with that. This is because, such and such, industry wants to make money off of it, so they set up rules in order to make it to where you have to go through this or that in order to get what you want. So, and the power companies is a big part of that. I'm not going to talk about things I don't know about, so there's a lot of things I could talk about, but when we decided to do solar, the reality of the situation is that I had never even touched anything electric. I always ran from that stuff. If I had to do something that involved electricity at all, I couldn't do it. I was out. I said, you know what? I can't do this. I'm out. So as we started wanting to do this, I started to understand that the reality of this, and you'll hear me say that's the word of the day, I guess. The reality of the situation was that I had a couple choices. I could either hire someone to come out here and set up my solar. I could have an electrical line brought in and we could just pay for that every month. I mean, that doesn't count our monthly bill, right? Or I could learn this stuff myself and take that risk, and learn it myself and say, you know what, we're going to buy all the components and we're going to figure this out. Now, you quickly learn that if you want to pay someone to do this, you're going to spend just as much as you would have paid for, electricity in town. So quickly realized that my real option for the amount of money that we had available, which wasn't a lot, was that I was going to have to learn how to do this myself. Now, this is where freedom comes in, right? In order to have that freedom to live a lifestyle that I want to live and to be free, right, from the grid, I had to learn how to do this. So the question you have to ask yourself, and it's more of a philosophical question sometimes, is how free are you really? Well, what I've come up with over the last few years is that knowledge is going to be a big source of freedom for you. And knowledge will tie in with money, because I think having money to a certain extent equals freedom. And, it means you can have a freer lifestyle if you have the money, because things aren't as much of a concern to you. You'll just pay for it. So I don't have that option, but I have the option where I can learn things. Now, there's a heavy, heavy price tag that comes with this, though. The price tag is that while I may be able to pay a fraction of what someone else would pay to have this stuff, I also work exponentially harder than those people do, because I've had to learn all of this myself. So as I'm sitting here doing this wiring and the schematics for this thing's directly from China here, I have to figure all this out myself. So I don't have that luxury, to be able to just call somebody out here and pay, tens of thousands of dollars to have my solar set up. Nope. I had to learn how to do this myself, or this lifestyle was not going to happen. So, the saying, knowledge is power. Well, knowledge is also freedom, folks. At least to me it is. Because without this knowledge, I would not have the freedom to be able to do what I want. But there's a heavy price tag associated with that. It's not free. There's no such thing as free freedom. I've learned that in my life. And that is the same thing when it comes to doing something like this. Now, it's nice to have the satisfaction to be able to look back when I'm done and say, you know what, I did that. I learned that myself, and I did it myself. Now, nobody can take that from me, even if they did physically take it from me. I have the knowledge up here to be able to go back and do it again. You know how, like, when they interview rich people, and they'll say, the rich person would say, I've heard this like countless times, they would say shit like, if you took everything away from me today, I would be able to do this again from ground zero. And when you're not rich, you hear that, and a lot of times you're very skeptical, and you say, bullshit. There's no way that guy would be able to do that, or that woman would be able to do that again. They're full of shit, and they're full of themselves. And, a lot of times money does that to people. It can change people. It can make them think they're better than what they really are, right? But knowing now, because I probably will never know what it's like to be that rich, but knowing now what I know as far as setting up my own solar, building my own structures, learning how to grow food, all these different things that I have learned out here, I actually believe that statement now. For most of those people, I actually believe them, because I feel the same way about this. Like, if this were to be taken away from me for whatever reason, or something happened where we had to sell everything, I think that I would easily, I know that because of the knowledge, unless something happens to my brain, right? Age is a factor, but I would be able to do this again. At least in a relatively in the near future, I'd be able to do this again. And so that is something that, how do you put a price tag on that, right? Like what is the price tag for that? Because, I have knowledge that I learned myself, and I picked up on my own. Of course, I used YouTube and all these different things, of course, right? But I have learned how to do this stuff myself, so you can't take that away from me. The knowledge is going to be there, right? And I could teach other people too. So the biggest thing that I feel like I get out of this out here is the knowledge that I get up here to now know, and the confidence that you get once you've done it over and over and over and over, like repetition, okay, that builds confidence. And if you've been able to do something over and over, you've been able to learn from scratch, you've been able to DIY just about everything in your life, you start to get confidence. You don't want to get arrogant, but you do start to have a lot of confidence. And I am now at a point where I have that confidence where I could just say, you know what? Okay, take it away from me. I'll be able to do this again because I've already learned all this stuff, and I know where to start. I know where it ends. It doesn't ever end, but I know what I'm doing. Okay, so that's the freedom, all right, for me. That's my self-described freedom of living off grid. Now, it's a lot of work, right? I don't think it's for everyone. I know it's not for everyone. I think a lot of people really get a really big slap in the face when they go to do this kind of thing if they don't have the money. Because one of the things that can easily happen is you can run out of money doing this and you can go into debt. Got all my wires done. So you can go into debt real quick doing this. Equipment fails. You don't do a job right. It could be catastrophic. If you don't build a building correctly, it can fall down. Somebody can get hurt. You can get injured. Your health. I mean, there's a lot of things that can go wrong out here. So it's not a cakewalk, and it's definitely not for everyone. And I do think that while I'm an optimistic person, and I do like to think that most people can figure things out, and I'm more of an optimist on that side of life, I'm also a realist. And I think being a realist, when you come to do what we're doing or what I'm doing, and what we decided to do with our life, to start from scratch and to build everything from the ground up and to truly embrace the homesteading lifestyle, not just talk about it, actually embrace it by learning everything. There's a difference, and I think there's levels to it. It's like you've always heard that in sports, or anything where they say, well, there's levels. And there's levels. There's levels of worse than what I'm doing. I mean, where people go out into the woods with nothing, like with a couple tools, and they test themselves that way. That's pretty extreme. So I do feel like there's levels to this, and you have to decide when you're going into it, how much money do you have saved up in order to do it at the level you want to do it? Or are you going to have to save more, or are you going to have to apply more of yourself into doing what I'm doing, or doing this type of thing? So hopefully that makes sense. But I did want to just talk about it because I get through and I'm thinking throughout the day. Most of the time, I'm doing this stuff by myself. And I said, I wanted to do a podcast. I don't know when I'll have my official podcast ready. You know how this goes. But, eventually I'd like to have a podcast. I'd be a little more scripted than I am today because right now I'm just talking. But I would like to have a podcast. And I said, you know what? The best way to do it is to practice. And I'm going to practice on my YouTube channel. Why not, right? So I don't get a ton of views anyway, so people shut it off. It's not a big deal to me. So anyways, if you have any comments, you want something to add to this, absolutely add it. And I'd like to hear what people's opinions are. Do try to keep it nice and professional, please. It seems like I go in spells where people will just leave some nasty comments. I should probably, one of these days, I'll do one of those things where I read some of the comments to you guys, but they're pretty funny. So anyways, hope everybody's doing well, and I'm going to get back to work, so I will talk to you soon. Over and out.